Welcome to the College Essay Advisors podcast. Before we introduce ourselves, here's a little preview of what's to come.
Don't limit yourself. Don't think that this has to be about one thing or another, or that admissions is going to respond better to a certain kind of answer. Think about what has shaped you, what's most critical for admissions to know about you when they're looking to add a person of value with opinions and interesting thoughts and lots of contributions to make. What will they want to know about you, that's going to really be authentic and sincere? Welcome to the College Essay Advisors podcast, an ongoing exploration of how to write admissions essays that get you noticed and accepted. Hi, my name is Stacey Brooke, and I'm the founder and chief advisor at College Essay Advisors.
Hi, my name is Becca Myers, and I am Director of Advising at College Essay Advisors.
And today we're going to talk to you about how to write an uncommon community essay. So, what do we mean by uncommon community essay? Just to start, what we're talking about really is how do you respond to a community related prompt with an answer that doesn't reflect a traditionally more categorically defined community. So I think communities that people default to include activities or clubs they're a part of, include ethnic groups, include religious groups, things that have historically been categorized as communities. But when you write so many of these school-specific supplemental essays, as you will, a lot of these categories kind of bleed into other essays. Some activity essays might be about some of the more traditional communities you're a part of. Maybe you covered some of that material in your personal statement. So if you get to a community prompt and you think, I've written about all my communities already, I have nothing else to say about myself, or so many other people are probably going to write about this community in the way that I want to write about it. How can I be a little more original? That's where the uncommon community essay comes in.
I think one way to approach it is to even start with what feels most sincere to you and then try to break it down into its more uncommon elements. So, for example, let's say that you're part of a volunteer community. That's incredibly broad. Let's say now you're part of a volunteer community at a senior center. It's a little more specific. Now, maybe talk more about what it means to be part of a community of elders as the youngest person. And so, that's one way of sort of, if it feels daunting to you to think about what's uncommon, to approach it from the side, to think about the element of the common activity that is most uncommon. That's one way I might think about it.
Completely. And even to tunnel in further to that experience, maybe you play mahjong with the ladies in the senior center that you're volunteering at. Is there something about that specific game playing experience and community, even if it's a community of 3 or 4 people, that is a microcosm of the way you approach interactions with other people in the world?
Yeah, that's great. And I think also a community doesn't have to necessarily be something that's listed on your activity list. That's another way to approach it. So
Hmm.
to think about maybe what you do with your friends. So I know we're sort of using gaming examples, but let's say that you're part of a Dungeons and Dragons community and you're the DM, and the skill set it takes to organize gameplay and to be creative on the spot and the improv necessary and the character building. Doing that has natural extensions to why you would excel in college. So you can definitely think outside the box. So let me pose a question to you, Stacey. Do you think
Sure.
it is stronger? Because I sometimes when I work with students and parents, they ask me like immediately, I want to do the thing that's so different and out of the box. I think everyone remembers
Hmm.
that Costco essay where you're comparing yourself to, I don't know, like things you find in the store. Are we
Hmm.
supposed to go so far out of the common to try to land on the thing that is so original? Or should we, like I was saying earlier, maybe find the less followed path in the thing that might be something other people write about?
That's a really incredible question, and
Thank
I will
you.
kick back to you that it's the wrong question to be asking.
Oh, okay.
Because I think what ultimately matters, and I believe you think this too, is that the answer is authentic and representative of something you want to say about yourself, something you feel is important to communicate to admissions. So you can communicate that through talking about your relationships with the mahjong ladies that you play with and exchange rules with and bend the rules with and have interesting conversations with at the table during your senior center volunteering. You can also talk about how you're part of a community of I'm personally part of a community of people who love festivities. Like, I'm a hugely festive person, which means if there's a holiday, if there's a birthday, if there is an anything, you can count on me to be the person who brings the decorations, who goes all out with the Halloween costume, who's just very intent on celebrating at like a 20 out of 10. That's the kind of sort of off the beaten track topic that says so much about you that people are unlikely to come up with. We at CEA sometimes call this a theoretical community. It's not one of those easy to define communities. It's one that you kind of pull out of thin air, but it is accurate and related to the things you love and do. And I think a lot is going to depend on what else is represented in your application and what feels maybe more important to intentionally say to admissions. And that might be based on what you want to major in. It might be what the population and the student body is like at the institution you're applying to. So there are lots of things to take into account, but I think ultimately, as with so many essays, the answer to what's best to write about is whatever feels authentic to you.
I think you can use this community space to also make yourself more well-rounded. So, for example, in your why essay or in your personal statement, if you really focused on your work as someone in STEM, it probably doesn't make sense in your community essay to talk about how you're part of a robotics community. So while you don't have to reach so hard to find the strangest thing, it does make sense to really work to find the thing that presents a more holistic picture of you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Totally agree with that. Why don't we why don't we just give some examples of what a community prompt might look like so you can recognize what are these questions I might be asked that would require such a response. So here's one from Brown. Students entering Brown often find that making their home on College Hill naturally invites reflection on where they came from. Share how an aspect of your growing up has inspired or challenged you and what unique contributions this might allow you to make to the Brown community.
Okay.
So this
Well,
is one. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Becca.
no, I was going to say the first thing that my ear lands on is or. So I think I'm always trained to listen to the difference between and or or. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
asking you how you've been both challenged and inspired. It's really asking you to pick one. So it
Mm-hmm.
can be a thing that has really motivated you to work inside communities, or it can be a thing that's challenged you to think differently and therefore gravitate towards certain experiences.
I also think this is an interesting one to think about with the example that I was coming up with for myself earlier about being a festive person, where when you're asked about reflecting on growing up and where you came from and the nature of, of your childhood, et cetera, I think a lot of people default to thinking about these larger categories, um, like religion, like ethnicity, like dance or activities that have followed you throughout life. Where if I wanted to take that, I learned to be part of a festive community or a community of people who celebrate at 20 out of 10. I totally could take that back to my childhood. And we were the house on the block that had all the Halloween decorations, and we had them up 2 months before Halloween and full costume for both of my parents and Halloween parties and all the best candy on the block. So I think you can think anecdotally for these community essays. You can think smaller if you're feeling like you don't have necessarily an obvious community to be a part of, I think. Or, if you're talking about being part of a community of people who love playing games, like love board games, that's something that could have bonded you in childhood with your family that now you take into any community you go into, maybe you have like a game playing community or like game night with your friends. That's something you could bring to college. Can you explain why being someone who wants to bring people together, sit down at a table, like have a set of rules and regulations that you make or break um, or kind of just like engage in for fun is interesting to you?
Yeah, definitely. I also think this is a place where you can talk about heritage, ethnicity if you haven't yet. So let's say
Mm-hmm.
you grew up in like you're Puerto Rican growing up in New York City and like being around the bodega was part of your community. Like I think there's ways that if you haven't addressed that yet, that this is a place where it can sort of naturally come out and can be grounded in location or like
Absolutely.
Stacey's saying festivities. And so what does it mean to sort of be surrounded by likeness? That's also really interesting. I think sometimes in
Mm-hmm.
these essays we focus so much on difference, but what does it mean to grow up in a place where you feel part of something is really inspiring, and that's half of that question. It doesn't always have to be challenge.
Or maybe you grew up in a community where you felt like everything was the same and everything was the same in a way that didn't allow you to be yourself. If you were in a place where self-expression was not championed, um, and that made you feel a certain way and makes you appreciate certain things now that you have the ability to think for yourself and have more freedom of decision making. This really can go so many different ways. So I think what we're trying to emphasize here is don't limit yourself. Don't think that this has to be about one thing or another, or that admissions is going to respond better to a certain kind of answer. Think about what has shaped you, what's most critical for admissions to know about you when they're looking to add a person of value with opinions and interesting thoughts and lots of contributions to make. What will they want to know about you, that's going to really be authentic and sincere? So Clark has a prompt that says the communities we belong to shape our values, our aspirations, and who we are as people. Share a story of the community that has impacted you the most and how it will influence what you bring to the Clark community. So a couple important things about this prompt. You have some choices here. You can talk about the shaping of your values, your aspirations, or what you define as who you are as a person. It is asking you to share a story of the community that has impacted you the most. So that's something that I think with all of the supplements, you want to be really careful and follow the instructions. This has to be something that really fundamentally shaped you and your character. I don't know that an argument, I probably could make an argument that my festive side is the most important part of my personality, but I probably wouldn't. I think I think here where we're looking for admissions is looking for something that really has been a dynamic and sustained force in your life. Honestly, I really could probably make this. I think every person that knows me would say that my community of festivities is truly the thing that defines me the most. Let's party.
Well,
Um,
and also I think that that has such a positive extension, like
yeah,
in terms of being committed to working with people and bringing a certain optimism into the world. I would say I would be nervous about picking something that feels so incredibly niche and doesn't necessarily feel like it radiates outward to other aspects of your
that's a good point.
application,
That's a
or
really good point.
something that, this is an interesting one to think about. Like, if you have done something in your life that requires a ton of financial investment, let's say the thing that shaped you most is like every summer you've gone to Bali. I don't know that I would actually focus on that. I don't know. It depends
Yeah.
on then, did you then like take what you learned there and choose to volunteer because you recognize so much of what you've learned or the privilege in that you've taken that outward in a different direction. I wouldn't write an essay that focuses on I've been shaped by the luxury of travel.
Completely. And an essay about how you travel with your family to India every summer to see your relatives is going to land very differently there.
Very differently.
If you're going
Yes.
to explore your heritage and understand where you came from, and absolutely. I mean, this is one where also, we hear all the time, don't write about sports, don't write all the things you can't write about, but you can write about how the communities that you spend so much time in, like the community of your swim team, like the community of your football team, have impacted you, as long as you have an interesting spin on what that community has taught you. Like, we're not going for the classic teamwork leadership thing here. There has to be a slightly different, interesting spin on it. But also, I do think that this type of community essay prompt does sort of lend itself towards the discussion of things that have very clearly on your resume been the sources of inspiration for you in places where you've sunk a ton of your time.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the most heartbreaking things that happens when I talk to students is when they say, well, I've done swimming for 14 years, but I can't write about it. And that feels so heartbreaking to me because it's such a part of your life. But like Stacey's
Hmm.
saying, find a different angle. Like I used to be a swimmer, and one of the most interesting things to me about swimming is that you spend so much time alone, like with your thoughts in the water. It's such a reflective time, and yet you're also part of something larger. And so I think that's just one way to approach it is what does it mean to be part of a community that also involves so much time alone? And how does
Hmm.
that reflect your involvement in the world? That to me would shape your personality, right? Like all that time away from your phone when it's just you and the water. How interesting is that?
Completely. Or can you zoom in? Maybe you're someone who like loved the crawl, and then you found this newfound passion for the backstroke and found that going backwards actually propelled you forwards in your relationships with people. And there are always interesting takes on well-worn subjects. You just have to look for them.
Absolutely.
But I do think your point is taken about students feeling like they invest so much time in something that it becomes too obvious to write about. That there's no such thing. I think there needs to be continuity between the person you present on your resume and the person that your guidance counselor and recommenders will be discussing and who you present on the page. You don't have to try to be weird for weird's sake or pretend you're someone you're not. You just have to be yourself, but think about it from a very personal angle.
Yeah, exactly. Be different within the thing that feels important and shows continuity. Yeah.
That's our episode for today. Thank you so much for listening or watching. If you like our content, please like and subscribe to follow us for more. Happy writing!